This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. To another episode of the E-commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It is my pleasure to welcome CARLA PENN-KAHN from Profit Peak to the podcast. Welcome, CARLA.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Wow, it's so cool to have you with your beautiful Aussie accent on the call with me today. I don't get to hear the ANZ, the Antipodean accent. I don't get to hear that very often these days, having lived in Mexico for the last 2.5 years or so. Still traveling to the US a lot, but you just don't get to hear that accent very often. So it's a very comforting thing for me to get to hear your accent today. That is for sure.
Love that. I love that I'm bringing a bit of home for you.
Absolutely. No, very true, very true. And listen, I've also heard I've been keen to get you on the podcast for a while now. I've heard lots of great things about you and your platform, the Profit Peak platform, from people that I respect in the industry. In fact, a couple of former brands that I work for now use Profit Peak in their business. Anytime I guess I hear from people that I trust, that I respect, that I've done business before in this industry, if they say good things about somebody or something they're building or something they're doing or something contributing back to the industry, I always love to try to single out those people and try to have great conversations with them.
Love that. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's put into you background and kind of Profit Peak and what Profit Peak. How did you get into this crazy industry of retail, e-commerce, digital marketing, and everything kind of up in that? I know that you were the MD of a couple of the largest kitchenware retail in Australia for over a decade, actually. And so it's not like you don't come with zero pedigree in e-com. If we look back right to the beginning of your career, how did you get into this beautiful industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really started when I was at university. I got a job in an investment bank, Credit Suisse, which it's hard to believe no longer exists because it was
I know.
juggernaut when I worked there. And interestingly, I was one of the first employees within the private banking division. So it was my first taste of startup land as well. And we worked on the Maya float on the ASX. And part of the Maya float was the story around, should Maya have a digital presence? Should they have an e-commerce offering? Look what's happening in the US market. They're making great gains, the other department stores in the space. And nobody thought it was a great idea when it was being talked about. And that's when I realized there was a massive opportunity that was ripe for disruption in the local market. So I quit my investment banking job and literally spent a couple of weeks working out, how do I get into this industry? So that's where I started.
Wow, what an interesting story. My mother, God love her, she's amazing, and she lives in Brizzy, and she worked for Meyer in one of their store branches for, I think, 15 or 20 years in the cosmetics division for a couple of cosmetics houses, working in their cosmetics space. And because she was of a latter age, a more mature age than a lot of the people working in cosmetics, she was able to service and work with a lot of women her age to help them. Because if you're a more mature woman, you don't necessarily want a 22-year-old selling you cosmetics when they don't understand your skin. They don't understand all the things you're dealing with at your age and menopause and all the things that women have to deal with. If you want to be dealing with someone and working with someone that you feel has natural empathy for the challenges that you are going through and what you're looking to purchase. And I feel like a lot of the things that you talk about, and there's a reason I brought this story up, it feels like a lot of the things that you talk about, at least through your content, are, hey, cool, there is math to all this, and there is ways we need to calculate all this. But if we wind it all back and we peel away the math, it feels like there is an element of empathy that must be there in well-run businesses that find product market fit and find success that's sustainable in the market. If they don't have their finger on the pulse of their customers, then no matter how big they are, they will eventually fail. And so it feels very much like this idea that, hey, yes, kind of everything we do has to be underpinned by smart math and connected systems and really deep analytics and research. But really, it comes down to, do we actually know our customers and do we actually give a shit in the first place? Correct?
I agree. And I think so much of that, exactly what you talked about, comes back to brand story and how much value sits within a brand and how that is your differentiation to market, not price or discount. And so much for me about a brand stems from things like integrity, empathy, human connection, emotion. Even for us at Profit Peak, it's really something very important to us and how we show up in the market. And if you look at world leading brands, that's how they show up.
Yeah, it feels like there is, and it feels like the further, even once massive brands stray from that core message or position or how they can, basically, once a brand forgets its roots, it feels like that's almost the beginning of the end, and it takes a lot to turn that back around again. And I'm not saying businesses shouldn't adapt, but even if we just take a simple example, which is Nike, right? For years and years and years, Nike had an unassailable position in the sports shoe apparel market. They tried to go all D2C because they got greedy and they were like, "Hey, why don't we take the wholesale margins and the retail margins? Why don't we go for that land grab and cash grab, as so to speak? We can forget our wholesale customers, our retail customers. We can forget our marketplace customers and channels, and we can do this both when we think of our digital channels, we think of our mobile apps, and when we think of all of our e-commerce opportunities and our physical stores, of which they had three primary formats of physical store, depending on the size of the city or town or region or catchment that they were operating in, they felt like they had this model absolutely dialed in. But in the process of doing all of that, it felt like they lost the connection with the sports people and the aspiring sports people, the aspiring athlete that wanted to buy into the mindset and heart set of just do it. It felt like once they lost contact with those core tenets and pillars of what made the brand great in the first place, it was the beginning of the end. And they've since recanted. They've since tried to get back into more retail doors. They've since gotten back onto marketplaces. They realize that these relationships with these channels that are literally interfacing with athletes every single day, those actually matter, and they matter to the brand and its longevity. So what is your take?
I think there's two things here. One is sometimes people want choice. They want to be able to go into a store, which in Australia for us is somewhere like Rebel Sport or Foot Locker. And they want to be able to see brand choice and make a decision. And a great brand like Nike probably wins a lot of the time when there is brand choice. But I think the second thing they completely missed there and how they connected with their consumer is they always went for the elite sportsman when it came to who was representing our brand. And that's why it's opened up this whole new athleisure market, especially in Australia and the US, where new incumbents have come in and really taken on market share because they used micro influencers. So people that were not the top 0.1% athletes in the world, but the everyday woman or man who running on a track next to you, someone who's attainable, someone who you can actually become competitive wearing other brands. And it really disrupted the market for them. So I think it was a strategy shift on the top level, but I also think other brands were able to become incumbents because the way we now look to influencers is not the top 0.1%. It's someone who is like us, that's more genuine, more integral to our lives, and someone who we can genuinely aspire to be like. And so that's why brands like On Running, Hoka in Australia, we've got Lilo Active, we've got CSB, Crop Shop Boutique, all these great brands taking on market share, LSKD, because we can aspire to be like the representatives of those brands or the micro influencers.
Yeah, and I think even somebody like a Gymshark, they
Right.
built their entire brand on the back of the everyday athlete in the gym that was putting in the hours, putting in the grind, was there, and they were committed to their health, their body, their image, everything about them. That this all was all these were all important priorities for them. And Gymshark aligned themselves with people trying to get there, and all the way from the founder on down, he was a gymfluencer. That's the reality. And he wasn't like the biggest bodybuilder in the world, but he was absolutely a gymfluencer. And he spun that into a cohort of customers that were like him. So he was part of his target market. And so he understood what that market needed because he was representative of that market. And I think that's something that a lot of brands forget when they get too big for their britches, is probably the way I would say that. And
Yeah.
sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that's totally fair. And I think the micro influencer is so much more affordable as well. So the fact that people glaze over the micro influencer and just focus on the Kendall Jenner, for example, that's not realistic. It's also not repeatable business. But if you have this base of micro influencers who are influencing the market every day at an affordable cost to your business, the effect isn't like a sugar spike that you suddenly can't repeat in your next year of trade. It's a constant growth, constant brand storytelling piece in the background. And I think people are always looking for ways to repeat a sugar spike. And that repeat sugar spike is often what leads them down an unprofitable track.
No question. And when you decided to start Profit Peak as a business, was it always your intention and always from day one, were you expecting to build something that was part consultancy, part mentorship, part coaching, part platform, almost part agency in some respects? Was that always the grand vision for Profit Peak that, hey, you said, look, we know we're going to have to build some tooling to be able to help deliver our unique value proposition to our customers, and so that they can get insights from their brand and from its performance in ways that no other platform out there is allowing us to do today? Or did that evolve over time?
It definitely evolved over time. So it happened inside our own e-commerce businesses. We came out of COVID, we had astronomical growth. We went from having like 10,000 products in our warehouse to 25,000 products stocked in our warehouse. We had margins going up, down, left, right. We couldn't even keep up with inflation happening in our business. We didn't understand what was going on. So we actually set out to solve our own problem. And when we solved our own problem, we thought, hang on a minute. We're so connected to this e-com community. We know so many brands are struggling with profitability. Why don't we make it our mission to help other e-commerce brands get profitable and stay profitable? And that's really where it all started. And so we always knew that our competitor who was in the market with us the whole time we were trading had wanted to buy us. They'd made many approaches, and we thought, now we know what our new mission is. So our first mission was making people love to cook. That was really our first mission with our kitchenware businesses. And then we knew our mission was making e-commerce businesses profitable. We were like, yep, we're ready to move on, start a new business. Let's get back to that startup phase again. And we just did it. We just jumped in.
Wow. And just to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, you run Profit Peak, you co-founded it with your husband, correct?
Yep,
And
that's
and
right.
that's always a unique. I grew up in a family business when I was at home where my mother was managing all the accounts and all the relationships, and my dad was actually going out and meeting with clients on site, etc. So I grew up in a family business dynamic, and it's always got its own interesting opportunities and challenges. How did that come about, and how did you guys decide, yeah, we really truly want to tackle this together, and we think we've got enough differentiation in kind of the areas that we're strong in to be able to make a great team in this Profit Peak business?
Really great question. So in the kitchenware business, we worked together as well. I was always CEO. He was always CMO. So this is something we've been doing for a long time. Again, very similar to your story. We modeled our parents. So my parents have been entrepreneurs. They're on to their third entrepreneurial endeavor, very successful in their own right, always done it together. Complementary skills, have always been in business together. My husband's parents exactly the same. His mum was the interior designer. His father always owned his own not kitchenware, sorry, furniture stores. So of course she would design the homes when customers would come in to buy furniture and fit it all out with her husband's furniture. So we really modeled what we learned growing up as well. And I think it comes down to being really knowing each other, but also knowing where your strengths lie. So my strengths lie in things like strategy, execution, finance. I don't get involved in anything to do with marketing and product marketing and placement in the market or positioning. I certainly have my opinions, but I know when my opinion stops and where his opinion takes over. And I think that's really important. I also think it comes down to when you're an early stage founder, things go wrong by the hour. Honestly, it's not an easy ride. It looks like it is from the outside, but it's not internally. And I think there's no one better to support you than someone who you've been with for a very long time, like a partner, if you are in a healthy relationship. And I also think we know each other's, I don't know, argumentative style, combative style really well. So we know how to navigate that much better than we would, which battles to win and which battles to lose, like any relationship.
Yeah, no question about that. Very impressive that you've managed to stay married and run a business together. That is, I think that's a feat for many couples. It sometimes the illusion sometimes of, oh great, we can work together, we can do a business together, whatever. It sometimes sounds better than it is. In some cases, it works out really well. It sounds like it's worked out amazingly well for you guys. But I think staying in your own lane. When I had my own e-commerce pure play business many years ago, I had the same thing. I had a business partner. He was all about the sourcing. He was all about the contract negotiation. He was all about the logistics. I was all about the e-com, the technology, the stack, the integrations, the marketing, the operational side of the actual e-commerce business itself. And we hardly ever had any kind of an argument because it was like, I don't really know how to do what he does. He doesn't really know how to do what I do. And we just stay in our lane. And so there's not a lot of opportunity to have argument when you have such unique skill sets. And as long as each person respects those lanes that the other person lives in, then I think you can have a pretty successful business partnership that goes beyond just the
I
relationship
agree.
side of things. So,
I think that
yeah,
word respect is really important. Like you really said it for me. It's that level of respect, like respecting when someone else's opinion is better than yours for the area of expertise. And sometimes as a founder as well, that's hard to do because we have two children together, but also Profit Peak is now a baby as well in its own right.
yeah, and that takes on a whole new life of its own as well, absolutely, when it's your bread and butter and it's your you end up spending so much time together when you will also work together. It creates more opportunities for friction, let's put it that way, than if you just work all day independently and then you come home at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or whatever it is, and then you see each other in the evenings or passing ships in the night, so to speak. When you started Profit Peak, the platform, the technology, did you look out to the market and say, "Okay, there's some BI tools out there. There are some analytics tools out there. There are some CDP tools out there. There are some attribution platforms out there. There's the North Beams, the Triple Whales, etc." So there are other platforms out there that I would say, and in all transparency with you and the audience, we've never done a project together. I've never worked with a Profit Peak platform before, so I have to go by what's on the tin, so to speak, on the website. But it seems like there are other platforms out there or combinations of platforms, let's say, might help a brand be able to get somewhere near where they can get with Profit Peak, the technology. But do you think that what makes you guys unique is some of the modeling, some of the mechanics, some of the integrations that you guys have, and the way that you bring it all together under one roof? What is it about how you do things that basically what I'm asking is, why did you
What's
not
our
align
unique
with an
value
existing
prop?
yeah,
Yeah.
what made you say, "Look, we gotta build this," because sure, we could work with some other BI platform out there and maybe even customize it with our own custom reports, but it's just not gonna get it done for us.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, what we uniquely found in our business, and I think it's for every D2C native business, is probably 60 to 80% of your revenue is actually driven by ads. Yet, your advertising data, your Power BI tool, your attribution tool actually doesn't connect back into your inventory. So it's not actually powering any insights that are deep within your actual business model. And what Profit Peak uniquely does is it takes all that incredible advertising data, all that incredible attribution data, and brings it right down onto the product level. So you actually know what products are the drivers in your business, what products you need to forecast inventory for to never go out of stock of. But then you also know what products in your inventory assortment are actually bringing you down. So it's uniquely a source of truth into the product behind the ads, behind the creatives, behind the owned media. And what we've really found is that once you've optimized for best practices when it comes to advertising, you're capped out, right? If you're working with a good agency or you have a great internal performance marketer, there's only so much they can do to improve. And then you're at the mercy of the platforms because CPMs are rising, CPAs are rising. But what they do have control over is actually the product in their assortment, the margins that they sell this product. The product goes into what channels, what audiences, what demographics, what geolocations to actually drive profitability. That's where the businesses have control. And we found no other platforms gave businesses that level of control. It purely focused on that marketing optimization layer, which they genuinely do not have full control over. They maybe got 70% of control on a good day. And I think that 70% is only going to get smaller and smaller. We've just seen the recent announcement where Meta says they're going to power all creative and all ads within the next year or two. Then really all the business has in their control is product and what market gets what product. So is a product more profitable if it's sold into WA in Australia? Or is it more profitable if it's sold into California? Like when you're landing this product, where should you be channeling it? What's your demographic? What's your geolocation? What's your audience? That's what we focus on.
Wow, and I find that first bit that you talked about around what can you not afford to run out of, I find that a lot of businesses, this is something that they just have no idea idea how to go about getting a handle on. They might know, like, from a top line level, okay, here's the 50 SKUs that we sell the most of, and of course, we're gonna try to never run out those products. But oftentimes, they may not know exactly what the margin is that they have on each of those items, particularly when they're sold in combination with each other. And what I found, particularly when I was still working brand side, is that there was a direct correlation. So I would get custom reports run out of the ERP of average based on percentage of average catalog availability on a running basis, meaning at any given point in time, what percentage of our catalog overall of these 20,000 products or whatever it is available at any given point in time. And there was I could see a direct correlation between conversion rate and average percentage of catalog availability. And it makes sense when you unpick that a little bit, because if our average cart size, not value, but size, was 2.5 items or 2.8 items or whatever it is, and if 80% of the time, the one of the items that's part of that 2.8 item basket is an item that we're now out of stock of, customers will usually abandon the entire cart. They won't just abandon the item that is out of stock. They'll abandon the whole cart because they don't qualify then for free shipping. Maybe they don't qualify for the loyalty bonuses. Maybe they don't qualify for all these other things that they would get. And in some cases, they're actually prepared to pay a little bit more for that item if they can still get all those other benefits of having that combined aggregated cart with one supplier. And what we found is that our conversion rate would drop pretty precipitously if certain popular items in particular were out of stock, because those were often purchased as a lead item with other items in the cart, in the basket, right? Cart composition matters, right? And I think I think the whole in stock, out of stock thing is something that not enough brands think hard enough about. And the overall impact on their business is not just, oh, I'm out of stock of this SKU, so I can no longer sell this SKU until I get it back into stock. No, there are so many other downstream effects to that, to your
It's your
business.
ROAS as well.
Totally.
So certain products go out of stock and your ROAS just absolutely tanks. And it's
Yes.
very hard to repair that because you go back into learning with Meta and Google's algorithm, and you may not get back to that position where you were before, where you had the in stock. And there's another whole challenge layer that we've solved as well, is traditional forecasting looks back on your last 24 months of history. Now, anyone running a D2C business, especially if they're a long tail inventory play, so they've got more than 50 or 100 products in their assortment, they're going to tell you that the product that was their best seller 24 months ago is not their best seller today.
Yes.
And that is why it's so important to be looking at what's happening today in the business on top of the historical analysis, and how are customers sitting in your funnel? What products are they interacting with? What ads are driving customer acquisition? What products are being bought from those ads? That actually determines what you need to be buying today for the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and the next 12 months. And all of that incredible data, we actually put that back into play. So once we know what are the key drivers for what customer audiences, what segments, we can run things like upselling on your front end of your website for better gross profit, better cash conversion, better AOV, because we know the customer innately. Every time that customer's coming back to the website, we know what products to be showing them based on their history, but also based on your inventory health and what's actually happening today in your business. That also is the same for putting product back into retargeting ads, putting product back into your ad feeds for your product placements, and also what goes back into Klaviyo as well on the owned media side. So making sure product is first and center with everything you do as a business actually drives profitable results.
And are you also, and this is something I used to see it a lot more, obviously, when I was working more with retail brands than B2B, which is my focus today. But
Yeah.
in the retail world, there is still an exceptional amount of times that I have seen where a retailer is out of stock of a product. They're still running paid and performance marketing
Oh, yeah.
and landing people on those product pages. They're out of stock, so they're spending a whole lot of money on ads that are never going to convert, or even if it does convert, what's going to oftentimes happen is they are going to buy a lower margin item as a substitute item. There's all sorts of unintended consequences when you run perfectly targeted ads to a product page that is out of stock, right? There's all sorts of bad things that happen in that environment, and none of them help our businesses grow. And plus, we're just flat out wasting money on
Amazing.
ad to begin with. And a lot of businesses, particularly if they have a very large catalog and they are running extensive ads, it is very difficult for them to keep up and actually get those ads turned off when they come out of stock and then turn them back on again when they come back into stock. Is this something that you see as a typical signal that these businesses aren't being as efficient with their ad spend as they could be?
Yes, the other thing that we look at as a really good signal is size curve. So we do a really well within the jewelry, the footwear, the fashion segment where they've got size curves. And we can see ads being driven to a product that's only available in an extra large. And you can see that it's a mini skirt that's best sold probably below a size medium. And they're running ad budget to this product. And it's a simple tweak in their advertising feed strategy that takes us not even 1 minute to deploy that stops them doing this. And it's the same with their cross selling. So we look at websites and how they're merchandised, and you will see that products are often merchandised with other products that don't even have stock availability. So your ability to upsell is hampered by that size curve as well. So, if a customer goes and adds a size small to their cart, your upselling through your site needs to reflect their sizing. And very few platforms are actually accommodating for this. And even worse, very few brands are thinking about it. And then they wonder why everyone checks out with only one item in their cart.
I think the other thing that I don't see brands doing, in fact, I don't, and I do 90% of my shopping online, maybe even a little bit more.
So
And one of the things there's two things that I don't see brands doing, and I'd love your take on this. One is they might have a quiz commerce engine on the front end, maybe asking for their size, asking for their favorite color, asking for all these different pieces of information, this zero and first party data that they want to collect against the customer. But then they don't expose that back to the customer in any meaningful way. And I'll give you an example. So I would expect if I'm a female and I'm a size 8 or a 10 or whatever it is, my favorite color is red. I prefer to wear jeans versus skirts. I prefer all these different preferences that I have. I would assume that if I provided that type of information to a retailer, that I could then instantly activate a site-wide persistent filter for exactly those products that match those attributes of me and my attribute preference attributes, right? I don't see that happening. So there's lots of brands that capture information in the moment. And at the end of that quiz, I don't know, let's say it's a hair care website and they sell hair coloring, they sell shampoos, they sell conditioners, whatever. They might ask you a bunch of questions about your hair texture, your hair color, your ethnicity, all these things. And then at the end of that, they might immediately recommend 1, 2, 3 products that they think are most suitable for you in that session, but
but not today.
they don't retain that information to improve your customer experience for them at every single touch point and every single future interaction that you have with them. And to me, that feels like a massively missed opportunity. And I don't understand why brands don't give a shit enough about their customers to actually have a meaningfully pre-filtered shopping experience just for them.
I agree with that. But I think the problem is that the software is available to do that. So, for
Yes.
example, we do that today in how we integrate with a platform like Nosto. So
Yes.
we use all our Shopify Metafield attributes where we have collected all this data about the product and about the customer. We pair that back to the Metafield. Then with our shared customers, Nosto can actually take that into the merchandising algorithm, provide better merchandising. We can provide better cross selling. And then all their emails that come out of Klaviyo are consistently being driven by us in terms of our product recommendations. So we are actually putting that into play, but we don't just put it into play from a revenue aspect. You can actually switch models. So you can go for a gross profit model, or you can also go for a cash conversion model, which for these long tail inventory businesses is so important because the reason they go out of their best sellers is because their cash is tied up in product that they don't actually need to stock anymore. It's product that they need to convert to cash and not repeat, or it's product potentially where they need to increase their cash conversion cycles in. And so we can actually get more cash into those products. So those A-class products that should never go out of stock literally don't go out of stock.
Wow. And when you first go into these businesses, is it a case of an initial audit and basically saying, okay, what's your tech stack? What are the components you're running? What does your inventory look like? Do you even know what your COGS are? Because lots of businesses, they think they know, but they don't really know because they're not plumbing it all together. They oftentimes don't know what their most valuable cohort of customers are, because if they're just looking at it on a pure revenue or pure AOV per customer basis, then they're not taking into account the cost to service. They're not taking into account the average margin and
Imagine.
propensity to discount. They're not taking into account the number of contacts they make to customer service per purchase. They don't take into account return rates. They don't take into account all of the factors that make one customer better than another, even if the total revenue that they drive to the business looks exactly the same. Not all customers are created equal in terms of the cost to service those customers. And so I feel like there's just so many pieces of the puzzle here that most businesses, they might inherently understand, okay, cool. Customer A spends 10,000 a year with us. Customer B spends 10,000 a year with us. That obviously doesn't automatically mean that they're the same value to us, but they don't really know how to take that innate understanding and operationalize the outcomes of that understanding so that they then can focus on their most profitable products, their products that move well, their products that they need to liquidate, combined with the type of customers that they actually want to retain and stimulate to do more business with them versus the customers that they should actually be going, actually, mate, if you don't buy from us ever again, we're probably better off for it.
Yep, agree. So the way we work is we run what we call a pilot. So it's a free trial period where customers, we help them on board. It actually only takes 20 to 30 minutes to get through the onboarding process, no code. We share screens, we walk them through the process. And then after about 3 days, there's normally enough data to start talking about opportunities. And to be honest, now with AI, all those opportunities are actually surfaced with our agent called Sherpa, but we still walk people through the process of how to actually attain the insights. And Sherpa's consistently making recommendations. So if you're going, hey, my AOV this month is down, and you ask Sherpa why, Sherpa's going to say, because X, Y, and Z products, which are leaders in terms of acquisition, are out of stock. This is how much you should be buying. And these products, which are your add-on products, are actually out of stock, and this is how much you should be buying. All of that diagnosis comes through as you learn to work with the platform. And then typically at about day 14 as well, which is the traditional end of the pilot, we hop on another call and we say, hey, let's walk through more insights. Also, what are other automations that you want to put into play? Do you have a merchandising tool that can take in our data? Do you want us to be running cross-selling on the front end of your website? Have you spoken to your agency about improving your feeds because your feeds are running low size curves? All of that comes as part of the process, and we actually do that in the pilot. So everyone is set up for success. Everyone in the team is armed with the knowledge, and Sherpa does the heavy lifting.
And I'm guessing that you then are taking data from across all, if they're an omni-channel business, which most brands are, you're pulling data maybe from a point of sale system or from an ERP. If it's the source of all truth around all transactions and where those transactions have come from, then maybe you only plug in with their ERP, or you plug in their POS system plus the Shopify store plus their Amazon account and maybe plus their TikTok shop account. So I'm guessing that you're plugging into two sets of channels. You're plugging into their marketing channels and you're plugging into all of their transactional channels so that you can get a good understanding of what's actually happening from a sell-through per channel basis.
That's
You
right.
you also are understanding what they have in stock at any given point in time in terms of momentum, because obviously what we've got in stock today, if something is on a hockey stick curve of momentum, then, and obviously, if we learn through experience that the supplier of that product, okay, we got product A and product B. Product A, from the point we order, on average, we get it in 3 days. Product B, from the point we order it, on average, we get it in 13 days. There's going to be a very different expectation
Right.
of inventory holding for those two SKUs, right? From those two suppliers.
100%.
So it feels
That's
like
exactly.
there's a lot of data points that need to be integrated in for your platform to be able to do what it does.
Yes. So typically, the way we connect in is we connect into your Shopify. So we're trying to stay for now in the Shopify ecosystem because it is such a big market for us to serve. So we connect into Shopify, we connect into Shopify pods. We can connect into WMS as well to get a really solid view into your warehouse management side. So we know when product's landing, what's on order, things like that. And then we also connect into your ecosystem of ad channels plus your owned media. So all of that data comes into your own environment. There's no data sharing. So everyone owns their own data. We don't train models on anyone else's data either. That's shared, which I think is really important, especially for our larger businesses we work with. And then you've got your own personal model, your own Sherpa that knows everything about both your transactions and your inventory health and tells you everything you need to be doing on both sides of the business. Because I think what people forget when they use another tool that competes with us potentially, for example, which you mentioned before, is if owning marketing is doing the heavy lifting, marketers can't sell if they don't have the right product. It does not matter how much you optimize, how much you market mix model. It doesn't matter how much you incrementality test. The minute that main product or the key products in your business go out of stock, the marketers are in trouble. And if they're not communicating with the product team, there's a complete breakdown in the business. And in most cases, those two teams don't talk, or they maybe speak for 5 minutes on a Monday stand up. And then they wonder why they've got product that's not moving, or marketing's wondering why ROAS isn't where they thought it should be.
So do you almost think of your platform as a merchandiser on steroids? Is that kind of how you contextualize what your technology does?
That's exactly it. I feel like we really believe that we're category defining because we're combining advertising and product in the same platform. So we service both the marketing team. So your head of digital is active in the platform on a daily basis, along with performance marketing and CRM managers. And then your product planner and merchandising team are active in the platform every day. So everyone's working from a single source of truth. There's full team alignment. And that is what's really broken in a lot of businesses, and it was broken in ours. So I was used to our head of digital constantly saying to me, but we're out of stock of our 50 top performers. And I was like, that's great. There's 2,000 top sellers still in stock, but then there's also 24,000 other products in stock. Can't you tell Google to sell those? And she was like, no, ROAS is tanking. And there's this constant argument. And really, it comes back to the right products being available and also controlling your margins. Everyone talks about CPAs going up, CPMs going up, but then you've got to work on your margins because you're not going to get CPAs and CPMs back to where they were pre-COVID. It's just not going to happen. But what you can do is work on your product, your pricing, and your margins to get back to that same level.
And you said you work with Shopify exclusively and Shopify Pause. That would lead me to believe that you then also have a good understanding of what's flowing through physical retail locations, and then therefore we know what we need to merchandise in those individual locations too. We know how much stock you should be holding in location A versus location B for the same SKU. And instead of saying, okay, in each store we're gonna set our, because a lot of times what I found brands do is they'll say, okay, we have a universal min max for retail for this SKU, which means that, okay, cool, when it drops down below, when the inventory feed back from the retail store, we just top up, and that's the universal thing for every one of our stores. Or they might have, and it doesn't work because each catchment, each group of customers responds differently in a given region to a different price point, etc. And so how do you, so you guys, you're
Sherpa
able to do
restock.
that, you're
Sherpa
able to
will
do
literally
inventory
say,
transfers, all that.
exactly. So Sherpa will say, hey, this product is outperforming in this store and you've got excess in Y store, you should be doing a transfer from Y to X. It's also able to say, if you're advertising, hey, these products are outperforming in this store. So you should be potentially building a campaign around these products for this geolocation. So just assuming that every market operates the same way doesn't actually work. And you're spot on. 60 to 80% of their cohort is actually the US market. Only 20 or 30% is being driven by the Australian consumer. And so what that actually means is what works advertising in the US or what's working in their US stores is not what's working today in their Australian stores. So those min maxes mean nothing. And then equally, East Coast, West Coast of the US are so different. Same with Australia, right? You could be sunny and summer on one side of the country, and then people are wearing snow jackets on the other side. So product actually is not a min-max scenario. It's what is happening today in each of those stores, each of those geolocations. How do we channel it so that when we get to the end of the season, we don't have to take the guts out of our product and mark it down 50 or 80% because it hasn't sold, when we kept selling out in one store and there was no product there for half of the season.
And if I'm a retailer today and I'm not running Shopify Pause, I'm running Rex, or I'm running some other retail pause of some variety, and man, there's a wide variety of pauses out there, and some of them are real friendly from an API perspective, and some of them are just not. Yeah, so there's a real mixed bag there, and I know because I've had to integrate with some of these point of sale systems in the past. There's New Store, of course, which is getting a lot of traction in Australia today, and of course, they've got great APIs. And then, of course, there are other, particularly in the B2B world, maybe not so much in the retail world, but there are other e-commerce platforms they're not as popular as Shopify, but they still are very popular out there. Do you see a future where because most brands today, the most successful brands today, they're omni-channel. They're not just an e-commerce pure play, right? They have the physical stores. They've got the marketplaces. They've got the TikTok shops. They have de-risked their business by being truly omni-channel, and they have
Right.
so many levers that they can pull from a channel mix and a marketing mix perspective that it gives them a lot more agility to do things that a single channel business simply cannot. But obviously, for you to be able to service those businesses, it means a broader tech stack usually that you have to integrate with. So is it a case of maybe not you building out a direct integration with some of those other systems, but simply having the API so that they can be custom
Yeah.
integrated with other systems?
For sure. It's definitely something we're ready talking about and looking at is how do we make our own APIs more flexible so that we can actually connect into any POS environment. But I'm also banking on Shopify POS really owning the market. And I think some of the features that we've seen in play that will be coming out from that Shopify POS Shop Pay data points that customers are going to start to get access to from an omni approach. I think that's going to help take uptake to the next level, especially next year. So really, we're an early stage business. So we're going to go where the customer is. And for now, we've got so much customers and so much value to provide to the market where we sit. And of course, as we start to reach TAM, we will look at other opportunities, open APIs, how we connect in with other POS environments. We may even in a year's time say, hey, we connecting now with big commerce. You just don't know where the market grows, but we're really banking on Shopify here for sure.
And I have to ask the question, I have a feeling I know what your answer is gonna be, but I have to ask the question about B2B because for the first, like, half, 3/4 of my career, I was heavily focused on the retail space. Now, I'm so heavily focused on B2B, and it's a super exciting, dynamic place to be. It's the B2B world is 5 to 10 years behind the retail world from digital transformation perspective and from an e-com perspective, but it's changing pretty fast. There's a lot more greenfield opportunities in the B2B world because there's so many that don't do e-commerce in any meaningful way today versus the retail world where 98% of retailers do e-commerce. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in the B2B world. And there's even the added complexity of at least in the retail world for a SKU, we typically only have a single price. Whereas in the B2B world, the price is an attribute of the customer, not of the product. And so this all of a sudden the data sets that we are trying to analyze in the B2B world explode geometrically because of the added factor of that multiplication of our pricing tables and what that does to the performance of those individual customers as a result. And so I feel like B2B would be just so ripe with opportunity for a platform like Profit Peak, but obviously the platform would have to be expanded to take into account those really more complex B2B use cases. But do you see a future where B2B matters to you guys?
Yeah, for sure. Already some of our customers use our platform for their Shopify B2B side of their business. So they're running data across the entire business. We've also had a lot of conversations with different businesses like furniture, B2B furniture online, wanting to get access to our platform. But the challenge still, so many of their orders are completed over the phone.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of the data synthesis that we're able to do with a pure Shopify based business really hard to get to that level of insight. And I know people talk about view through data and being able to like augment view through data. Honestly, I think it's a load of nonsense in the politest way possible because nobody knows what's in the human psyche. Whoever cracks the code on what is in the human psyche and what touch point in the customer journey is more valuable is going to be a trillionaire, never mind a billionaire. So anyone who says that they understand view through data, they understand which touch points drove more value in terms of marketing acquisition, they don't know. And then you add in the complexity of telephones, that's a real challenge.
Yeah. No question about it. Listen, it's been a super interesting conversation. You clearly know your ish. You clearly know where you play and why. You clearly know what your why is as a business. You have this nailed down. But is there anything you do not do today for your customers that they're saying, hey, it's great that you do these 53 things, but here's 2 things you don't do. Can you add this to your platform? Or are there any other immediate gaps you're seeing in your platform or the market that you go, okay, we don't do this today, but give us 6, 12, 18 months and we will. What is high on your priority list?
High on our priority list is actually to become an IMS, so inventory management system,
Mm.
but an AI first inventory management system. So if you look at the ERP space in the commerce world, there really have been no incumbents. The market today is pretty much the same as it was 5 years ago. And also the software that they provide their customers hasn't actually changed in 5 years, which is why we had to build Profit Peak, because our ERP couldn't give us this level of data insight because it didn't look at advertising. It didn't look at customer journey. It didn't look at geography. It didn't look at anything that our business needed because it wasn't built for a commerce business. So the highest thing on our priority is, what does IMS look like for a commerce brand that's omni-channel in 2025 and beyond? And how does it look where it interfaces with both a human and an AI agent? So what level of data synthesis does a human need to take in from a dashboarding perspective? Also, what tasks within an IMS role stays with the human and what actually gets taken on by an agent? So things like pricing COGS is one of the business's biggest challenge. But actually, we've configured already, and it's in alpha with us now, an AI agent that takes in all your different invoices, understands your currency fluctuations, and prices on demand your COGS back into your Xero or your QuickBooks. And then no one has an option to say that they don't have a source of truth into COGS because the agent's actually done all the lifting for you. You've gotten out of that Excel spreadsheet. It's the worst job ever. Trying to work out COGS, proportioning landing costs and duties to product, all of that, right? That can actually be done by an agent. And we already started modeling out how that works.
Wow, super exciting. And how do you guys make your money? Now, you're a SaaS platform. It looks like it's pretty damn transparent. 599 a month AUD. You've got 3 add-on modules, but that's pretty much it. Or 3 add-on modules combined with 2 add-on modules plus a service module. But it sounds like for that 599 a month flat fee, everybody gets access to the same sort of 12 or 14 key features of the platform. So you don't have like a small, medium, large, but there is an element of order volume that will impact that base fee of the $599 a month. So if I'm doing 100,000 orders a month, I'm going to get charged very differently than if I'm doing 10,000 orders a month. But that's a base fee that's part of the platform. Yeah.
That's right. So we looked at it from a price elasticity basis. I'm obviously a finance girl. I don't want to be paying at the top end of my order volumes or my revenue volumes in slower months. Price should be elastic in SaaS, in my opinion, and it should also be usage based. And it should be ROI accretive to the business. And if it's not, that's where you get into these challenges of low utilization. Do I want to continue with the platform? Do I want to negotiate pricing, which is something that we've made a really hard stand on that we don't do, which is why we're transparent on pricing. I never want someone going to a trade fair, sitting next to one of my customers and the two customers saying, oh, I pay this and I pay this. And I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
And I've actually had that happen to me. And then I was like, wow, I'm being ripped off. I didn't realize SaaS was so negotiable.
Yeah.
That's not how we show up with integrity and trust. And that's just not part of our brand values. So it's super transparent. For larger businesses, we are working with businesses doing 50 to 100,000 orders a month already. And of course, their pricing scales quite differently, but ultimately it gets more affordable as your business scales on a per order basis.
Love it. Love it. I'm guessing that the vast majority of your clients are headquartered in the ANZ region. You do your pricing on an AUD basis, not a USD basis. Ambitions, I was going to say ambitions for the first thing I did as soon as I moved to Mexico was change all my pricing to USD. That's for sure. I was not going to continue to charge in New Zealand dollars after I left New Zealand. That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Target markets, target growth opportunities for you. Obviously, you landed and expanded based in Australia because that's where you're based. What is your biggest sort of target market you think moving forward? Is it the US? Is it Canada? Is it just North America more generally? Is it Europe? Is it ANZ? Is that kind of still going to remain your focus? Where are you guys finding the most traction from a market perspective currently?
From a market perspective today, it's definitely in the AU market. And that's purely because of my LinkedIn presence and strategy. And that was deliberate. It didn't just happen. That was actually a marketing plan we had in play, which we've been very lucky has been successful and led to a lot of inbound demand for the platform. But we've actually been receiving a lot of inbound demand into the Canadian market, which has been really great. US market is definitely going to be a core market for us. It's something we have to test. We plan to start testing within the next 3 months now that we have more confidence in our positioning and the product in the market. So I feel like Australia is very much like a test bed. And I think the beauty of it is that a lot of the brands that we're working with, while they are AU headquartered businesses, they have stores in Seattle, they have stores in Washington, they have stores in New York, they have stores, even some of them have stores in London. So we've actually been exposed to the international business and the international data and the multi-currency, different landing costs. All of that has been our exposure from day one, but obviously headquartered in Australia.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, how do you like people to reach out and get a hold of you? I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile, which you're very active on. Super impressed with all your content output at scale.
I
Very
actually
impressive.
I write it all. There's no ghostwriter, and I even
Yeah.
guarantee that no ChatGPT because you can go and find all my grammar and spelling mistakes. They're all genuine.
Yep. I'm exactly the same. So that's another reason why I have immense respect for you and what you're building. And of course, I'll link to your website in the show notes as well. But other than that, if they want to have a chat to you about all things, let's just say the best operational layer you can have in your business and your CFO's best friend, what's the best way to get a hold of you and have that chat?
Yeah, reach out, Carla, CARLA at profitpeak.io. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I get probably 50 to 100 DMs some weeks. So if it takes me a day or two to come back to you, it's just me on the other side, genuinely. And I'd love to chat, love to help you. We're in the game of making businesses profitable. And if you're looking at your numbers and saying, hey, how do I actually get profitable? We can tell you how. And you probably know from the connections that we have together, the changes that we've made in the businesses are pretty drastic.
Yeah, absolutely massive. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to turn the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question. Any question you like, it can be personal or professional. Carla from Profit Peak, what is your question for me today?
I love that. I would love to know why you decided to niche down into B2B from an e-commerce perspective. So you've got so much experience, obviously, on the B2C side. What drove you down the B2B path?
Very good question. There was two primary motivators. One is in all the years that I worked agency side, the most exciting, most complex, most scary, most heavily integrated projects were the B2B projects. And for someone like who's not primarily a marketer, I'm primarily a technical and operational consultant, solution architect, enterprise architect, etc. That side of things, when that side of the technical side gets super complex and messy, that's where I do my best work, and it really keeps me engaged and interested. And I found that the B2C and D2C world was primarily going down a path of sameness, meaning that everybody was running Shopify, Klaviyo, Gorgeous, the stack.
Uniformity.
It was becoming super homogenized in the B2C and D2C world. And so where somebody like me could come in and add a lot of value was limited because they knew when a new client came to the agency, they kind of already knew what they wanted their stack to be, and they just wanted you to build and integrate it for them. And so there just wasn't as much room for me to flex my muscles in the way that I would like to in the B2C and D2C world. And projects, I like to say that in the B2C world, typically the projects are more marketing led as opposed to operationally led. And as a result of that, not always, and I'm generalizing here, but it's form over function. In B2B, it's function over form every single time because you're dealing with operators. Most B2Bs don't even have a marketing person. They got a sales manager, they got to maybe have a head of RevOps, but they do typically not have a marketing function in the business. Or if they do, they might have a marketing manager or something like that operates in service of the sales team. So that was the one thing. The other thing was when I went independent and I started my own consultancy, I looked out to the market and I said, every consultant, coach, mentor and their dog works with B2C and D2C brands. Every agency and their dog works with B2C and D2C brands. And I was like, do I really just want to be a generic e-commerce consultant in that massive red ocean environment? Or do I want to niche down into something that I'm really good at, combined with a side of the market that's growing really fast, combined with a space that there's not a lot of competition because there's not many of us that specialize in the complexities of B2B. And it was like, well, this becomes a little bit of a no-brainer to go into more of a blue ocean market than a red ocean market. I was probably 2 years too early. It was pretty lean the first couple of years, but man, I could see where the puck was going. I was trying to skate where the puck was going, and the market has truly, especially over the last 2.5 years, has just turned the corner in an absolutely massive way. And we're going to have our best year this year in 2025 by far. We're probably going to do 40% more revenue this year than we did last year. It's the market has really started to turn the corner from B2B, and B2Bs are starting to realize that there's actually a business model here that they better figure out. Otherwise, they're going to be in deep shit. So that's how I came to be in this space.
Love it. It's very similar to my story and how I came out of investment banking and went, hey, I want to be in e-commerce. You did the
Yes,
same for B2B, but within the segment.
totally. Listen, Carla, this
Amazing.
has been absolutely incredible. Please keep pumping out the incredibly knowledgeable and educational content you are putting out. You're one smart cookie. I've totally enjoyed our conversation, and I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.